The judge's orders are clear. ICASA is to revise its rates, issue new ones within 6 months, and in the interim, the 2014 regulation comes into effect. But the question is, who's the real winner? Miners are going on to 2 months without pay, but still, those we've spoken to remain defiant. In the next 30 minutes, I'll bring you the highlights of South Africa's Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene's 2015 budget speech. There has been a big discussion around policy clarity in Zimbabwe, but I want to talk to political stability. If one is picking up the papers in the recent days, the headlines seem to suggest a different story from the sustainable political stability environment that you were talking about. The government may actually have to increase taxes to raise revenues structurally rather than the usual sin tax or other tax policy changes. And this is because in his medium-term budget speech towards the end of last year, the minister indicated that he needs an additional 12 billion rand or just over $1 billion if he is going to raise revenue without necessarily cutting government expenditure. So there has been speculation as to where he's going to get this 12 billion rand. With about a quarter of South Africans unemployed and the majority of those being aged between 15 and 29, South Africa needs drastic solutions to creating jobs. Some of those men and women have been on buses from the northwest to Johannesburg from as early as 6 a.m. this morning. They've walked about 4 kilometers in the blazing heat, and the message to their employers is clear. 12,500 rand on the table, or simply the strike will continue. 22-year-old Ruanzano Risike remembers the day 4 years ago when she visited former statesman Nelson Mandela at his home in Johannesburg to show him a portrait she had drawn.
He looked at the picture and he was shocked.
It's been widely reported that it will take miners years before they fully recover what they lost. Even so, this miner believes it was not in vain. In retrospect, do you think it was worth being on strike for 5 months? For what the outcome was?
It's better because...
Minister, what is your response to the idea or the perception that Chinese investors are favored in Zimbabwe, especially amongst the ruling party officials? This is the place where the most lethal use of force by police on citizens took place in post-apartheid South Africa. Miners were gathered on this very kopi over 3 days, and on the 3rd day, tensions escalated. Police opened fire, and in a matter of seconds, 34 people were killed and more than 70 injured. Now, 2 years later, there are still reminders of that dreadful day and of those who lost their lives. Temperatures here in Katlu can peak to up to 50 degrees Celsius, making this place the ideal location to generating solar power. For the people living in this community, economic policy rhetoric and election campaigns that they say are filled with empty promises mean nothing. You went from banking to shoe fashionista. Tell us more about this transition. Discussions will be continuing here at the World Economic Forum on Africa, where political leaders and business leaders will seek to establish the best way to creating an investor-friendly climate in Africa. Mining, unfortunately, was the worst performing sector, down 16% month on month and down 14% year on year. So that's not good news. But interestingly enough, and I think this tells a consumer story, the beverage sector, both non-alcoholic and alcoholic, was the best performing sector there. I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa's financial capital, and just the other day, a delegation of Zimbabwean authorities visited the country seeking investment from South African business and Zimbabweans living in the country. As politicians do, they filled up a room and sold a good story of ample opportunity. It was a great chance to speak to the people running Zimbabwe's economy. Perhaps a continuity, given the fact that he ran his campaign pretty much the way the former president, the late President Michael Sata did, promising workers that he would advocate for their rights, especially in the case of the Chinese mining companies. But investors are also frustrated with this government because there's still a lot of uncertainty, particularly on the regulation front. So effectively, Governor, if I'm understanding you correctly, what we're seeing now is the real economy, the real value of the economy.
You are very right. Okay. This is now the real economy.
All right, thanks, Rosipo. Now we hear straight from the horse's mouth. Here's how Minister Nene will raise the revenue needed to balance the books. Ethiopian shop owner Aweke Tedese says his numbers are dwindling by the day. Fewer buyers, fewer items. Now, as with most budgets, it was a serious event, but there was some laughter in the House, particularly when the Minister Nene announced sin taxes. 1 in 2 Zimbabweans are unemployed, consumers are heavily indebted, and the economy is riddled with non-performing loans. I'm Mhundwa in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for watching.